So hi guys, once again, welcome to the year 2025 with FIXITGEARWARE-SECURITY. And as we promised this year, we're going to start our penetration testing events and labs while ensuring that we put you on the fundamentals and basics in cybersecurity in terms of red teaming, blue teaming, information security, and data protection. So this we have assigned to be happening every first Friday of every month, inclusive with the Tools Friday series. So let's say, like for this week, we're going to start this introduction to red teaming and blue teaming theoretical labs. Then let's say the next first Friday, we might introduce you into some vulnerabilities alongside with some tools that we have discovered that can help you in your various penetration testing or bug bounty related activities. So as promised, this week we said that these videos are going to be short. We wouldn't want it to exceed more than maximum 15 to 20 minutes, just to make sure that for those who have short attention span, do not have any reason to okay, skip the rest of the video and not get the nuggets. So deep knowledge we intend to share in these videos that we intend to upload on our YouTube channel. So with that being said, before we move on to today's series, introducing you into red teaming and blue teaming theoretical labs, we want to do our normal rituals and normal routine by asking you how you're doing. For those who are looking for jobs, so far has your effort been positive efforts? And for those who also secured a job, how are you improving? Are you learning? Or are you also showing some cooperative measures in terms of working alongside with your team members? And of course, with other superiors that you have to report to. So if you are doing all this and you're really doing great at your new place of work or job, congratulations. We are happy for you, and we hope you keep soaring high and keep moving forward, and that your current position is going to be the lowest you have to be or experience. And for those who are still looking for jobs, please don't give up. Keep trying. Review your interview process you've gone through. What did you do? What are the lapses? What are the things you're supposed to do you didn't do? Were there places where you paused, you were scared, or you sound like you're not confident in yourself? Okay, so review all those things, retrace back those steps, correct the few negative notions that your future interviewers might have about you despite your skill set, so that you don't have to be in a situation whereby you will be, not securing that position despite the whole effort you have put in terms of studying and preparing for that. So with that being said, once again, keep the flag flying. Don't give up, don't quit. And I wish you all the best in life and hope everything turns out well for you. So for this week, as we categorically stated on our X channel, that we are going to teach you the concept of penetration testing from security lapses. So penetration testing definition, we all know this. And of course, for those who are participating in bug bounty, you all have categorically what you really focus on, like in terms of, are you focusing on web application, Web3, or are you focusing on mobile application and so on? So that being aside, your Recon process tools, all those things are not going to be discussed here today. We just want to focus on some core fundamentals or basic knowledge you should have before, trying to perform all those various steps such as Recon, information gathering, and so on. Because without these fundamentals, without this knowledge, you're not going to have a well-refined nature of how you handle your things in terms of conducting your vulnerability research or trying to hack a specific target which you have gathered these informations from, right? And of course, if you look at various social medias on YouTube, practical method of hacking, majorly for web applications, you're seeing how you exploit various vulnerabilities, okay? But these are they are just showing you how to exploit these vulnerabilities without even telling you the fundamentals or the basics on what you need to know before even proceeding to, perform your Recon process. And of course, move on to finding vulnerabilities that are related to the type of vulnerabilities and information that you are very skilled with, okay? So FIXITGEARWARE-SECURITY had to put all these things together today and of course tell you what you need to know. So first of all, on this chart right here, you can see we have the knowledge of infrastructure. So when we talk about the knowledge of infrastructure, we mean what type of infrastructure you're trying to hack. Okay, if you're trying to hack a mobile application, you should stick to understanding what framework this application is built on. So when we talk about framework, we definitely talking about the coding language. Okay, is it written on that? Is it written on Swift? Is it object-oriented programming? Is it Java? Then if it's not Java, is it Python? If it's not Python, is it Rust? So these are the things you need to know, because having an overview of a vulnerability and trying to exploit has to be the fundamental knowledge on the framework that it is written on. Okay, so let's say you're trying to hack common vulnerabilities that are known with mobile application. Do you really have understanding on how to exploit, command injection for Rust application? What lines of code that are vulnerable or that can be considered vulnerable when you see them on the binary files? Of course, related to that programming language. Okay, so for example, there's a way you implement a code in Python that is vulnerable to injection, but in Rust language, it might be different. Okay, so this is why it's very important, or it's a necessity for you to understand the framework of the infrastructure you're trying to hack. Okay, then for web, you should definitely be familiar with various vulnerabilities, which is, of course, disclosed by OWASP Subs 10. Then we're talking about the industrial control system. So when we talk about industrial control system, it's quite vast. It could be ICS that are also linked to SOCs, which is known as security operation centers, right? So how do you exploit ICS? Categorically, there are various ways you can exploit ICS, and not just exploiting them. You have to understand what are the components you have to look out for when you want to exploit an ICS. Okay, let's say, for example, you use Shodan or whatever means you use to do your Recon, and you discover an IP address. Okay, so that IP address can be, related to a web application. It can also be linked to an ICS. So what are the functionalities you have to look out for when you get that IP? First of all, you have to see what is the IP linking to. Is it linking to a login form or a login page? Okay, if it's linking to that, is it exposed, like there are no authentication implemented, or not just implemented? Is there any way you can, inject a code into that IP that is running on a server, and of course, be able to execute an RCE, which is, of course, is remote code execution. So these are the things you need to know. Then, of course, when we talk about ICS as well, we're also talking about how outdated the software that is running that ICS component for remote login is. Most ICS, as we all know, are always on legacy systems like Windows, right? So are they still running Windows 10 that are obsolete? Okay, if they have their own special build for those operating systems, are those build recently patched, or are they part of the versions that were reported that are vulnerable to certain, vulnerabilities or proof of concept that has been disclosed in the public? So you see how important it is for you to understand the knowledge, or have a knowledge of the framework, the knowledge of the infrastructure you're trying to hack. Because without this knowledge, it's like a blind man. Okay, sorry to use the word blind, but not from a bad perspective. But it's like a blind man moving in a direction without even, asking for help, or trying to understand, how do I say it? Trying to know what step to take, like using the walking stick to hit the pole to know if they're actually in the right direction or in the wrong direction. So having a knowledge on the infrastructure is very important. Okay, you might be, reconning to get information about an organization because you're testing for a web application. But luckily for you, you fell upon an IP address or a URL that is linked to an ICS, and it's not, secured. So there is no form of authentication implemented. You can also report that as a vulnerability, because if a hacker gets access to that information, of course, they can compromise that ICS and, of course, lead to some nuclear explosion or nuclear reaction and so on. Now for cars, you also have to look about cars. How can you exploit those cars? Are they recently updated? In terms of, when we talk about recently updated, we're talking about most component of the car, like electrical cars, for example. They have to be regularly patched with the latest firmware that has been released by the manufacturer of that electrical cars. So if they are not recently patched, of course, a malicious hacker can exploit it. Then we now talk about cloud. So when you talk about cloud, what do you understand aside, that organizations use storage buckets like S3 and so on, right? Personal clouds can also be exposed, whereby the organization who provides that services do not know that there are some specific commands that can be run to pull the files from the cloud, even though the user that is trying to access that cloud via a URL and exploitation do not have the login credentials. Okay, so these are the things you should be looking out for, okay, when it comes to cloud. Then if we move further on cloud, the next thing you have to be thinking about is, okay, this cloud you have access to, is this some form of containerization? Are organizations hosting the application on this cloud? And of course, if they're hosting the applications on this cloud, do they have some security policies? How can you, exploit that cloud, maybe to pull down the container, or, try to run some execution on that container that can make the app to experience some DOS, which of course is denial of service. Okay, so having that broad or foundational knowledge on the fundamentals of these various infrastructure will now give you an insight of security lapses you should be looking out for. Then after getting that security lapses, the next thing you'll now be looking out for is vulnerabilities that is associated, okay, with that specific infrastructure. Okay, so you cannot be hacking a mobile application and you'll be focusing on, let's say, how you exploit a PHP, which is of course mostly web applications, right? Or let's say you're trying to access a web application, right? You just randomly start testing PHP. You don't even know that at that specific point, maybe it's extensible markup language that was written in that particular frame or component of the web application you're trying to exploit. Okay, so understanding this foundational knowledge of this infrastructure and chaining them all together to understand the framework of that specific infrastructure you're trying to test will now give you a deep insight of specific research you have to do in terms of known vulnerabilities that has been disclosed. Then when you now discover those informations, you can now try to verify if that particular infrastructure has that vulnerability or is vulnerable to the informations that you've gotten from the internet or from your various articles or publications that you get information from. And if they are vulnerable to that, you can now proceed to exploit them. And when you're able to exploit them, you can consider that as a bug and of course report to the organizations that own them. So this is how you should understand the concept of penetration testing and apply this knowledge into bug bounty hunting or bug bounty, whatever it is called. But not just applying that, you also have to have a knowledge on the vulnerabilities that are possible in that specific infrastructure. Okay, I cannot be looking for example, let's say I'm trying to hack a car and I'm looking for, let's say, certificate pinning, or let's say I'm looking for SSRF, for example. Okay, I'm not saying it's not possible, but hacking a car, most especially, is basically like how I can, exploit authentication of that car and of course move that car as the legitimate user. Okay, so this is why it is important to understand the infrastructure first. Then after understanding the infrastructure, understand the frameworks they are running on. Okay, like most applications on cars are also based on object-oriented or C# or C# or whatever you call it. Now you've understood the frameworks. The next thing you want to now research is, okay, that particular framework, how is it exploited in a car? Okay, then after you've gotten that information, you now verify based on testing if that particular car is vulnerable to that information you have gathered on the internet that is related to that specific infrastructure. And of course, if you now verify that, okay, this car is vulnerable to that, you can now proceed to exploit and of course report it. So most security researchers would demonstrate how you exploit these informations or these vulnerabilities, but you not having the fundamental knowledge makes you lost. Okay, you say, I've been trying this, I don't even understand what I'm doing when I'm pen test on my own private time with my own lab. This is because you do not have the fundamental knowledge. So I hope this video has helped you, and I hope you are able to understand this, and you can now proceed to now do whatever you do regarding your recon or information gathering. And of course, have a deep sense of knowledge of what you should be looking out for when performing penetration testing or bug bounty related activities. So with that, we have come to an end of this video, and I hope you have an interesting knowledge and you're able to get something very important that you can use to add to the existing knowledge you have. So that being said, if you find this video interesting, drop us a like, give us a subscribe, leave your comments in the comment description. And of course, we're ready for you this year and expect more good stuff, including live penetration testing videos on our YouTube channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next week Friday for another interesting topic. Bye for now.